Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Pearlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Pearlman.
Hello, my guest is Jack Dalton. He is an animal activist, a youth ambassador for the Orangutan Republic Foundation and also the Orangutan Alliance. He received the 2021 Presidential Environmental Youth Award, and he was also a finalist for the 2020 Time Kid of the Year. He is author of the book Cowan, the Orangutan Lost in the Rainforest. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Nancy. I'm super excited to talk with you today.
I'm excited to talk to a young person who is so active in trying to protect and save our animals. And you have really focused on the orangutan when there are thousands of species out there. Why did this primate get most of your attention?
Well, it's because when my conservation journey first started, it actually all began with orangutans. When I was just 8 years old, back in 2018, my family traveled the country for my dad's work while my mom taught me because she's a teacher. She homeschooled me. And we traveled all around the U.S. One of the places that we stopped and visited and lived in was Memphis, Tennessee. In Memphis, went to the zoo. It's a wonderful zoo there, the Memphis Zoo. I highly recommend it if you ever get a chance to go down. But the Memphis Zoo is a wonderful zoo. And one special day, it was a baby orangutan's birthday party there. At that birthday party, I looked into the baby orangutan's eyes, and I fell in love. And it was here that I first learned about how orangutans and palm oil and deforestation were affecting them. Ever since that day, I took action to help orangutans, and Orangutan Alliance reached out to me, named me their youth ambassador. And ever since then, I've been working to help orangutans as my main focus, but also help other species and the environment.
You obviously care about the orangutans. You were moved when you saw an orangutan live and the eyes connected. But there are so many other animals out there. Are you trying to get people to each take a different species and be concerned about it, write about it, speak about it, try and save their habitat, try and protect them in the wild?
I try to tell people to follow their passions, even if that passion is the same as someone else's. I love orangutans, but I also love Rubik's Cubes. I love Legos. I love space. There are so many things that I enjoy. So I tell people to follow their passions and do what they love. So if their favorite animal is an owl, or if their favorite animal is a bear or an axolotl, they can go out and they can help those animals, because most animals have issues that face them, have threats. So we humans can do what we can for our favorite animal, because chances are they're endangered, they need our help. It doesn't have to be their full-time commitment, even if it's just little steps to help them.
Have you had a chance to see this endangered great ape in the wild?
Actually, I have not yet. But in October of 2022, I will be going to Indonesia, the Indonesian rainforest, to see orangutans in the wild for the first time, as well as plant some of the trees that I worked so hard to raise the funds for. So my book, Cowan the Orangutan Lost in the Rainforest, has a special thing where for every book bought, a tree is planted in the rainforest. And in October, I'll actually be going there to plant these trees in the rainforest.
That's a delightful children's book, and you named it with the name that means friend in Malay?
Yeah, so Cowan means friend in the Malay language. And I decided to name him this because my story is about a baby orangutan who gets separated from his mother. And mothers and baby orangutans have a very close relationship. The babies stay with their moms for the longest out of any animal besides humans. I decided to write my story based around that. But when the baby orangutan gets separated from his mother, he relies on the help of his friends to get him back.
Tell me more about your book, Cowan, the Orangutan Lost in the Rainforest. It has beautiful drawings.
Yeah, so My book, Kuan the Orangutan, Lost in the Rainforest, illustrated by Lexi Yang, who's a very talented artist, and is actually the one who first got me started on my conservation journey. She was the one who first taught me about orangutans and how palm oil and deforestation were affecting them. But she happened to be a very talented artist. She actually did the illustrations in my children's book, which came out so good. The children's book overall looks really great, and I encourage you to buy it because for every book bought, a tree is planted in the rainforest, which is great because not only are you educating yourself and others, if you share the book with people, about orangutans and get them to care, but also you are planting a tree and helping the real-life orangutans, not just the ones in this illustrated book. At the end, there's also a link to a video called Kuan the Orangutan Lost in the Rainforest Yoga, which is a fun yoga video that gets the whole family moving along with the original story.
Orangutans are only found in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia and in Malaysia, and of course, being on the island of Borneo, they might pass through Brunei as well. How many are left?
The orangutan numbers are few, and they are critically disappearing. The Tapanuli orangutan, which is the most critically endangered species of orangutan, is around 700. Of course, since orangutans are wild animals, we don't know the exact number, but some experts do say that if we don't help them now, they could be gone within the next 10 years. So it's desperate that we need to help orangutans.
And of course, one way to do that is not to buy products made from palm oil plantations in the area?
Yeah, so palm oil is an oil that is cheap, and it's used in over 50% of grocery store foods and cosmetics. It's so widely used that it's tough to avoid. But there are some good places that help to show you products that don't have palm oil, such as Orangutan Alliance, who certifies products palm oil free. Now, the reason why palm oil is so harmful to the rainforest is because palm oil can only be grown within 10 degrees of the equator. Within 10 degrees of the equator is Indonesia and Malaysia, which is the home of orangutans, the only home of orangutans. And over 85% is grown in areas in Indonesia and Malaysia. It's devastating to orangutans because they need to clear the forest to make room for these palm oil plantations.
Sadly, the forests are totally clear-cut. They don't go in and selectively cut a tree. They just wipe out the entire forest. And I've seen video where there'll be an orangutan in a tree and they'll just cut it down and there goes its home.
Yeah, it's devastating. My first action as a kid conservationist, I wrote a letter to 3 companies, and one of the things that I told them was that it was important for us to protect orangutans. And I showed them from an orangutan's point of view. I kind of put them in an orangutan's perspective, and I showed them how one day if you wake up and there was no more home, you'd be really, really sad, especially if you were an orangutan. Having that kind of in-person, first-person experience in the letter that I wrote to 3 companies was really something that I felt was good in Orangutan Alliance. When they saw that letter, me reading it on the internet, they decided to name me their youth ambassador.
While these countries do have some sanctuaries, some national parks, the land area is simply not enough. Is there land that is trying to be saved and set aside for the orangutans?
There is. I'm working with a couple of organizations, as you mentioned, Orangutan Alliance and Orangutan Republic, but I'm also working with Bornean Orangutan Survival USA. Bornean Orangutan Survival actually has this jungle school where they help to rehabilitate baby orangutans, and they get to release them back into the wild once they're able to. So that's really helping them. There are sanctuaries down in Indonesia. But as for getting land set aside for orangutans specifically, and any animal, it would be crucial and vital to orangutan survival, but also it's very difficult. It would be really important to protect land for orangutans because orangutans are known as an umbrella species. This is because an orangutan takes up so much space to roam because it has to find fruits and it looks for a new bed every night. So if we give conservation land to orangutans, we also give conservation land to the many endangered plants and animal species living in that area. Because orangutans take up so much space to roam, if we give them conservation land, we also give conservation land to so many other species.
You're trying to save orangutans in the wild. You recognize that captive orangutans in zoos help bring attention to the wild relatives, yet you don't advocate that people have orangutans or any other wild primate as a pet.
Yeah, having orangutans as a pet, called the pet trade, is actually illegal and is one of the biggest reasons why orangutans are endangered. Of course, say after palm oil and deforestation. But the pet trade is something that's common, especially in Indonesia, where orangutans are from. It's something that's certainly devastating to their species because orangutans are meant to be wild. They aren't meant to be, like, captive and held in someone's home to be treated unfairly and poorly. The people who own orangutans often have no idea how to care for them, which is especially devastating to the species. Oftentimes, the pet trade, the way they acquire the animals, typically babies, they take the orangutans away from their mothers, oftentimes killing the mothers, which is devastating to the orangutan population because after the mothers are killed, they can't have any more babies, of course. It's really awful to the orangutan population.
You encountered orangutans in a zoo. Zoos do have major conservation programs, but we can't depend on zoos to save a species. We do need to work on saving their habitat in the wild.
Yes.
They require special attention and special efforts to maintain a decent habitat in a captive environment. Have you found that the orangutans are being treated well in American zoos and zoos elsewhere?
The zoos that I've been to that had orangutans, mainly the Memphis Zoo, I actually got to go behind the scenes at the Memphis Zoo with Lexi Yang, who's the primate zookeeper there, and the orangutans are treated very well. Actually, at the Memphis Zoo, every year, the baby Rowan has a birthday party, and it's set up. They make paintings for him. They give him specialized little cookie treats. So at these zoos, they're treated very well. They have beautiful enclosures, and they live a nice life. Having animals like orangutans in zoos is important because you're able to spread awareness of these animals and then also help them in the wild using conservation efforts that the zoos have.
I think it's important to point out that we as Homo sapiens are very closely related in DNA to orangutans.
Yes.
And each orangutan has individual facial features and can be identified very easily by how they look.
After looking into the eyes of this baby, I just fell in love. He really struck something inside of me that made me fall in love with orangutans. And as you mentioned, we share over 97% of our DNA with orangutans, which is some of the most out of any animal. And it's not the most, but it certainly is up there. Another reason why I fell in love with them is because they're the only red-headed apes. And I have red hair, which is why I am super into them, and I just feel really connected with them.
And they have longer arms than you, and they are very, very strong as they rather leap through the high branches in the rainforest.
Yes.
You mentioned that by setting aside areas to help the orangutan, we're also saving other rare and endangered species in the rainforest, both plants and animals. That's really important, that
it's critical.
Is so much that needs to be preserved and protected. I think it's also important to remind people that orangutans are not monkeys. Monkeys are lesser apes, and there are only 5 great apes: the human beings, gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, and bonobos. Do you find it difficult to get across to other young people the importance of taking action and becoming an animal activist?
I find it less difficult to inspire kids to help animals than it is to inspire adults, especially older people who may have these kind of stuck ideas of how things may be and may still believe that, oh, no, orangutans and other apes, they're monkeys. They're all monkeys. But they aren't. So having the younger kids actually is a great way to help out because it's our future, and we're able to let them know that what they do now and how we want to help them is going to affect how we live in the future and how it will affect our kids and our grandkids, which is super, super important. Now, other people, it's a bit harder to inspire to take action because they feel it's going to affect their lives so much. But really, conservation can be done to any extent. It can be just something that you do. I don't buy products with palm oil. I recycle. I try to refuse a plastic straw every time I go out to eat. Those are little steps that don't take that much effort. But you can also be a conservationist who dedicates your lives to animals, like Dr. Birute Mary Galdikas, who's been caring for orangutans and is the leading orangutan expert. Or like Gary Shapiro, who has been working with orangutans for almost 50 years. These people have dedicated their lives to helping animals like orangutans. Without them, orangutans probably would have already been gone. But every little bit helps.
There are so many different organizations trying to save so many different wildlife species. Some focus just on the orangutans. Some are focused on wildlife around the globe. Do you find that they are all working together? Do you find that they are all accepting somebody young like yourself to speak out for the animals?
Yeah, so I do find that there certainly are so many organizations all around the world who are working to help so many different species. There are people working to help tigers, elephants, rhinos. But my favorite animal, the orangutans, I'm currently connected with 4 organizations, 3 of which are dedicated towards helping the orangutans. But along with that, there also comes Plastic Pollution Coalition, who actually happens to have a team of youth ambassadors who all work together on different projects and collaborations, which I think is really neat.
And you have certainly dedicated your young life to saving the orangutans and will be taking over from some of these scientists and conservationists who have been working for decades to protect them. You certainly deserve the environmental awards you've received. I expect another book in addition to the one you authored, Cowan, the Orangutan Lost in the Rainforest. You've done a lot of work for these very beautiful animals. I want to thank you so very much for your dedication, your concern, and for being such a great youth advocate. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I really appreciate it.
I have been speaking to Jack Dalton, who is Youth Ambassador for the Orangutan Republic Foundation and Orangutan Alliance. I'm Nancy Perlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Perlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.